Hello and welcome along to this week's Writer's Routine, where we are chatting to a Nobel Prize winner. Abdulrazak Gurnah's new novel is Afterlives. We talk about how important it is to keep telling stories of colonialism from different entry points, also how he knows when he's ready to start writing again, and why he's never really got on with a word count.
I kind of admire, in a way, people who set themselves targets like that. I believe Somerset Maugham used to say he would write 5,000 words from 8 o'clock till about 12 o'clock, and then go and have a good boozy lunch and sleep it off in the afternoon. So to be able to work with that kind of precision must be very comforting.
There is more with Nobel Prize winning Abdulrazak Gurnah in this week's Writer's Routine. Yes, welcome along to the show. It's Writer's Routine, where we take a look through an author's working day. My name's Dan. The job is to uncover some of the secrets of the most successful writers, to see how they get stuff done, to see if there are any tricks or tips that we can use along the way. Now, this week our episode is brought to you by Plotter. Very excited that for a little while Plotter are helping to power this show, just like they can power your writing. Now, Plotter is a writing tool, and it's one that does what the title says. It helps you plot. It helps you plan your books the way that you think. It gives you the tools to outline faster, organise smarter, and turbocharge your productivity. Now, they can sound like buzzwords sometimes, but I think this can really work, because when you open the software, you get this digital corkboard that makes it so simple to plan and visualise everything that you need to get your story down. And when you're there, you can easily swap between the timeline, outline, your notes, the details on your characters and places. You can even tag all of them to make it easier for you to skim through when you're in the throes of writing. All of it's colour-coded like it might be on a notebook, only it's right there on the screen where you need it. If you're someone that is a visual writer, if you like bright things to be easily accessible, this will really help you out. It lets you track all the details of your plot at a scene level and then switch, swap, and use them as you'd like. And what I really love about it is, if you're having trouble getting an idea into a manageable plot, if you've got just the entry line of a story, maybe a brief synopsis in your head of what might happen, thinking where can it go from there, what happens next, well, they have 30 proven plot templates to kickstart your story planning. More than 30 from some of the best writers around. It just gives you some ideas to snap your story into life. And we've spoken on this podcast about many different types of writing software, and this works with them all. You can import and export from Word and Scrivener to seamlessly transfer your story into some tech that helps you actually write. Because that's what Plotter does. It helps you deal with the back end to give you more time to write and less time worrying about everything else. It helps you strip it back into what is important and what you need to focus on. Now, the best way to see what it does, how stunning it looks and how helpful it can be, is by getting to plotter.com and taking a look around. And while you're there, you can get 10% off the software with this show, which means that for under £20, $22.50, it's about 18 quid at the moment, you get access to this software forever to help you plan and plot your story, to make you organise smarter and outline faster. To get that deal, use the code and link that is in the episode notes of this show. 10% off. It will streamline your plotting. Get to go.plotter.com/writers routine. Go.plotter.com, plotter without the E, plotter.com/writers routine. This week on the show, we're chatting to Abdulrazak Gurnah. He won the 2021 Nobel Prize in Literature. Come on. What a guest to tell us about his writing day. He won it for his uncompromising and compassionate penetration of the effects of colonialism and the fates of refugees in the gulf between cultures and continents. That's why he was given it. And we talk about it, why it's still important to tell these stories. Abdulrazak was forced to flee Zanzibar when he was 18. His book Paradise was shortlisted for the Booker Prize. His book By the Sea was longlisted for the Booker Prize. His new one is called Afterlives. It tells the story of Ilyas, stolen from his parents by German troops and trying to return home. Abdulrazak is now Professor Emeritus of English and Postcolonial Literatures at the University of Kent. And we talk about how he managed to balance his writing alongside a hectic job as a lecturer, immersing himself in books all the time. You can hear why he doesn't want to see things when he's writing. All he needs is a blank wall for concentration. We talk about why reading is as important for the process as writing. And he's a Nobel Prize winner. First one I've ever chatted to, so come on, a lot of questions there. We chat through how actually he only knew he had a Nobel Prize. The first he'd heard of it was 9 minutes before everyone else did. Now, you might remember I tried to release this episode a few months ago, back in, I think, like October, when the book was new. Only there was problems with the audio. I think I've managed to fix it. There are still a couple of glitchy sounding moments, so bear with it, but there's a lot to take away. There's a lot to pick up on. With Abdulrazak Gurnah and his writer's routine, we start every show with what he sees around him in the place where he sits down to write.
At my desk, which is at the top of the house, which is like the third floor, I suppose you'd call it in the US. In other words, ground floor, first floor, second floor, we would say. And when I look out of the window, which is right in front of me, on a clear day, which today is not, I would probably in the distance see the spires of the cathedral. But in between, I see a lot of roofs and some trees. And that's it. The road is over to the right. I don't really see it. So I'm looking across the city from over the tops of houses and trees, and in the distance, the cathedral spire. Nothing in Canterbury is allowed to be taller than the cathedrals. So that's it.
So that's outside the window. I mean, what about in the room around you? You've written so many books now, and what won some prizes along the way. What is there that allows you to be creative? What inspires you around you? What have you put up?
Oh, well, I'm not like that. I prefer not to see what's around me when I'm working, actually, because it kind of distracts. Some people like to sit where they can look out and see things and look at the garden and all that. I prefer to face a wall, actually, to be honest, because then I can just concentrate on what's on my screen and what's in my head. But of course, as you look around, when I stop working and I look around, there are familiar things, which I suppose, kind of reorient me. So, and sometimes I pause and look at that and remember the moment when whatever it is that the photograph or the print memorializes, and you can take it back to that face, perhaps.
What is there anything? Is there anything more productive around you? So, plot points, maybe post-it notes, a whiteboard that you sketch out your ideas on?
No, I have a notebook beside me, in which I do scribble things, or have scribbled things in the, kind of over the few weeks and months as I'm working on something. So sometimes I think, yes, I remember this, as I'm coming to a certain point, and then I will go and find that in my notebook. But I don't do post-its and charts and whatever. It's pretty much all in my head.
Now, we get quite particular and specific, I would say, on the show. Listeners love to know, what you're writing with. So you mentioned a screen. I take it it's a laptop. What software do you use? And most nerdily of all, what fonts do you like to write with?
I write at a desktop, actually. I don't write at a laptop. And I use Windows, what do they call it, 10? And I'm not sure that I worry too much about the font. But usually I like font size 12 anyway, because it's big enough to see clearly without peering at the screen. I just use a keyboard. I don't worry too much about particular forms of software or whatever. It's just what comes in the machine. Normally, I'm up by about 7 or so, 7:30, and I'd probably be sitting at the desk before 8. And generally speaking, I would stay there. Apart from the obvious, going downstairs to the bathroom, that kind of thing, I would probably stay there until lunchtime, take a break, and then come back to the desk until 3:30. Depends how tiring the day had been, or how productive it had been, or how hot my study is getting, or if there are other things I need to do. But normally about 3-ish, I would probably take a break and either do something else or read. That usually is my reading time. So if I'm writing, then I'll be writing all day. And quite a lot of the morning is often taken with revising the previous day's work, going through and making sure that all is well. So by mid-morning, probably I can take a step forward rather than a step back. So that's the working, the writing is like. But then reading is also part of all of this. And, so the couple of hours or 3 hours or so of reading late in the afternoon is also part of the writing program in a way. It may be I'm reading something that is appropriate to what I'm writing, or it may be just something occurs to me. It might be entertaining, I mean, in the sense of engaging to read in relation to whatever I'm doing. Not necessarily research, I mean, but it's really just something that in the writing process I thought, oh yeah, there's such a moment in such a text. I'll see if I can go and read it.
When you're reading these books, what is it about them that is inspiring to you towards any particular project that you're working on?
It's not inspiration. I think it's inspiring. It comes from inside. Of course, in the longer term, because you read things and you store things and process them. In the longer term, what you read does reflect. So, but the reading I'm talking about is not really to do with inspiring what I'm writing at the moment. So I might be reading, I might be writing, and then I might think, oh yes, I'll go and just read Oliver Twist again. It's not because it's going to be something to do with what I'm writing, but I just feel a hankering for Oliver Twist. So I'll go and read that. Occasionally, of course, there is something very specific that I want to check, or something like that. And that's a different kind. Then that is research. In that it's very focused, it's instrumental, and either it's something that I had read in the past already, and so I need to look it up to check. Or these days, of course, you can find a great deal of information online, by which I mean, because I was teaching for so many years at the university, they very kindly allow somebody like me, whom they call an emeritus, is a kind of retired professor. They allow me to have full access to the university library. So if I need to know anything, these days, especially with e-books, with articles online and that kind of stuff, it's really incredibly easy to just check up on whatever you need to know. And because I still belong to the university in that respect, and I don't have to pay to have access to it, and I just do it through the library. It's a wonderful perk.
Now, when you start to write every day, so you're saying that this is probably more towards the afternoon when you've made some slight revisions through the morning. Is there an aim for what you're working on that day? Is there a point in the plot that you'll be happy to get to? Is there a word limit that you'd like to reach?
Well, you ought to reach as many damn words as you can. If possible, write as much as you can. But there is no hurry. I kind of admire, in a way, people who set themselves targets like that. I believe Somerset Maugham used to say he would write 5,000 words from 8 o'clock till about 12 o'clock, and then go and have a good, oozy lunch, and sleep it off in the afternoon. So to be able to work with that kind of precision must be very comforting. No, some days it's a couple of pages. I think, generally speaking, I would be disappointed if I didn't get a couple of pages. But I don't expect much more than that. So yeah. But that's the kind of aim, if you like. It's bad days, you end up with a couple of paragraphs, definitely.
That's interesting. If there is no kind of goal for the day, how do you know when you're done? How are you satisfied with your work if it comes to the evening time and you have to stop typing?
I don't think it's difficult when you get stuck, or rather when you have several options and you can't decide which one you would like to go for. Or quite possibly when sometimes you sense that maybe it's not quite working as you want it to work. Things are not quite, you sense are not quite right in some way. It might be just a small way. And rather than, struggling, sometimes I find it's better to just say, okay, just leave it. I'll look at it again next hour. But usually, if everything's going smoothly, it'll be, I like to stop when I know what the next thing's going to be. Because then it means that when I get to the point of actually writing the next day, I'm not sitting there staring at the screen thinking, now what? I already have what the next step will be. And so it's quite nice to be able to call it a day with that knowledge that, okay, tomorrow I'll start on this.
And at the end of the day, when you have called it a day, your books can be quite, all-encompassing and very immersive to read, let alone to write, I would imagine. So in the evening, how good are you at switching off from your novel? Or how much does it stay with you and you find it hard to concentrate on other things because your characters keep coming back?
It's not that hard. There are other things to do. I love cooking. So, it's also thinking. I find that you can carry on thinking, or I can carry on thinking without it being a hassle or, an obsession or something like that. So sometimes, if I'm lucky, a couple of nice sentences occur to me in my mind, as it were, without me being at the desk. I think, oh, that's nice. I'll try and remember that. I used to be much better at it when I was younger, of course, just remembering the sentences. Sometimes these days they don't come back the next day if I don't write them down somewhere. There's always other things to do. There's harmony, there's people to talk to. So I don't carry on throughout the whole time, but things do keep popping in, and sometimes just before going to sleep, something I'll see, that's not bad. I'll try and remember that tomorrow.
At points when the words are struggling to come out when you're in the middle of the day, but you feel like you need to push on, what have you learned helps kind of grease the wheels and unclog the block? Some authors listen to a certain piece of music, some will have a spot of coffee. Is there anything that you do?
No, because generally speaking, I don't have that experience. I write quite slowly, and if something's not coming, I just sort of keep fiddling till it works out, and something does come. Sometimes you've written something which will need further attention, but you want to move on, or I want to move on to some other destination that I can see. So sometimes leave things in a state where I know they will be revisiting. And if nothing's happening, then I just go into something else. But that doesn't happen very often. Usually I can just sort of stick it out until I get it right.
Now, I speak to many authors on the show who are into book deals where they need to write, a couple of books a year. I've spoken to some who have to try and get 3 books a year down. You're in a position where you've been able to take some breaks between books. I guess, how do you know when it's the right time for you to sit down and start writing again? Is there some grand publication plan that you want to publish in 2022, then maybe 2025? Or is it, are you fortunate enough to be in a position where you can say, you know what, now I'm ready to go again?
Yeah, it's more the latter, really, because for most of my professional life, both as an academic and as well as a novelist. I've been working. I've been teaching for before even I published the first book. I was already teaching at the university here at Canterbury. So all the time that I was writing novels, I was also teaching. So when to write was not always my decision entirely. It also depended on the availability of headspace and just simply the space to be unoccupied as well with teaching and associated activities. So the reason that there are gaps, which is quite fine with me, I'm not troubled by that, but the reason there are gaps, because I really had to wait for the time. It could be vacation, during the university vacation, that's when I would write, or it could be a period of study leave. That's every few years, and I'm sure the same is true almost in almost any university climate, atmosphere, location. Every few years, you get time to do your own research. So you don't have any teaching except doing your own work. So those are the writing times to some extent. Then my writing was driven by those sorts of cycles and availability and so on. I didn't write during term time. I didn't allow as well my time to be competed over. When I was teaching, I was an academic and gave my time fully for that. And then I'd find the time to write, and then I would write fiction. It doesn't mean that your mind is not working in the meantime. It doesn't mean that your notebook is not filling up. But that's not the same thing as actually that concentrated attention to the text. For me, and I really like having 6, 7, 8 weeks when I know I can do what I've described, which is just get up every morning, sit at my desk, and do nothing else, unless I wish to.
If you know that you're approaching a period when you will be able for 7 or so weeks to sit there and work, how do you kind of prepare for that? How much do you like to know about your story before you sit down and start typing?
Yeah, quite a bit, because I like to know quite a bit. I mean, because I keep notes, and sometimes, whatever it might be that I think I'm ready now, because I have the time, and because I've done enough thinking about this and enough reading about this, I'm ready to begin. And it might be that whatever then comes out is not actually the beginning at all, but a place to start, which as you progress, especially these days with the capacity that we have for moving texts around, then it might be that at some stage as I'm into the writing, I think, no, this is not a good place. Let me start with that. But until it takes a little while to kind of get the shape of it, to be steady enough to say, right, now the next thing is, for me, it's sort of like, might be an episode, and another episode, which will not be exactly following one on from the other, until some kind of shape, more firm shape, begins to interest itself.
We are back with more from Abdulrazak Gurnah in just a little bit. Thank you so much to Plotter for sponsoring the show this week. You can get 10% off their software with this show. To get the deal to streamline the plotting and the back end of your storytelling, get to go.plotter.com/writers routine. There's no E in Plotter. Go.plotter.com/routine. There's no E in Plotter. Go.plotter.com/routine. Now, I'd love to hear about the best book that you read this year, by the way, that you have read this year, by the way. I think for 2023, I'm going to use the hive mind of our writing community here just to get some book recommendations. The best thing that you've read this year doesn't need to have been published this year. Doesn't really need to be that topical. Can be anything. That's the benefit of being fortunate to have listeners, to have you tuned into the show from completely different parts around the world. we'll have so many different books from different genres that can be recommended to us. Let me know the best book that you have read this year, and I will stick it on the website. You can actually look at some of the books that we've had picked for us on the book recommendation page over at writersroutine.com. While you're there, use the contact form and you can tell me about the best thing that you've read in 2023. You can also send it as an email to writersroutine@gmail.com. If you're enjoying the podcast, if you've learned anything along the way, and this week we've got a Nobel Prize winner on, by the way, you can support us and help us carry on bringing you these chats with the best authors around as often as possible. To do that, get to patreon.com/writersroutine. Doesn't require a lot, just a few dollars a month really keeps us going. It helps us keep bringing you these chats with the best authors around as often as we can. For that, you get merch, bonus content. There is even a way for your book to sponsor the show. And it just helps us out. And I know times are tight, so anything that you can sling our way goes an extraordinarily long way. To show your support for the show, become a backer, pledge over at patreon.com/writersroutine. Let's get back to it with Nobel Prize winning Abdulrazak Gurnah talking about his new novel Afterlives. We chat through how he gets to know his characters, and we talk about the Nobel Prize. Come on, how many Nobel Prize winners have you spoken to? I had so many questions, so little time, so we kept to the important things. And we discover how he only knew it was happening, that he was even in the conversation 9 minutes before it was announced. That's on the way, and we pick things up, talking about his writing, which isn't specifically genre-led. So how much does he think about plot points and beats before he starts writing?
I usually begin with an idea, a problem, an issue, or in some cases, something bigger than that. So like with Afterlives, I knew I wanted to write about that historical episode of the First World War, as it's called, the war in 1914, 1918. That historical episode as it happened in that part of the world, in East Africa. I knew that that's what I wanted to write about. And then the thinking is about how to approach that. You know, what's in other words, how to organize, how to dramatize. It's a pleasure of writing for me. That once the idea becomes solid and clear, and then trying to think about how to approach it, how to do it, how to show it, so that you get to reveal, to get to the kind of exposure that you want, or to expose to the inflections that you have on that issue if you want to write about. That's the pleasure of just sort of trying to work it out. So then it doesn't need plotting, basically. I mean, it's just the idea or the destination is there, and things occur because then things kind of pile up on top of each other. As it were, you know, sort of the original idea begins to build up its other ideas as you go along, and sometimes something occurs in the process, right? And sometimes, if you're lucky, you just reach across for a book that you see almost out of boredom, as it were, out of casually reach over for a book, and it's just exactly the right thing, you know. And there is that kind of serendipity at times. Listen, this is interesting, and in it goes. It's called writer's luck.
I've never heard of writer's luck before. I hear many times about writer's block, but never writer's luck.
Well, that's one example of just kind of or sometimes you know, you're watching a documentary or something like that, and just it's about the very subject that we've been mulling over and thinking, but you weren't watching it because you knew it was going to be there. You just a chance. There it is, staring you in the face. That is writer's luck. Well,
I tell you what, let's focus on that process then with the novel Afterlives. You said you wanted to focus on this very specific period of history. What made you want to explore that? A few books in now, what made you want to ask questions and reflect on those very specific years in Africa?
Yeah, well, in an earlier novel, Paradise, the final episode of that novel is actually a recruiting drive for the German colonial army. And that's how the novel ends with the young man. You see the subject, mostly the main subject of the novel, joins up. When I started to write that was actually the first thing I wrote, that final episode. But then I became interested in how this young man, who would be about 18 or so at that point, by the end of the novel, how would he have got to that point of doing such a strange thing as joining German colonial army just before the start of the 1914 war. So it ended up being the story of the boy. In fact, the novel begins with the boy first and then continues to that point that I've just described. I've always been interested in that historical period, partly because I grew up hearing stories about it, because it wasn't in the 1950s, was a long time after 1918, of course. But there are people still alive who had participated in some form in that war, in that confrontation, including a grandfather of mine who had been conscripted into the German carrier corps. The roads were not good enough for vehicles, so material, both personal as well as military material, could only be transported by being basically carried on people's backs and heads. Anyway, he was somebody who used to talk about his experiences in the war. He survived. Many of the carriers did not. It was quite a horrible position to be in. And many of them were actually coerced into doing that particular fast. Anyway, so I heard about it. In fact, although many people have said to me, I didn't know anything about this historical episode or the presence of German colonialism in Eastern Africa. So the fact that it's little known elsewhere is in fact, if anything, is still reason for wanting to write about it, because it's an episode that isn't well known, and it's a good thing always to know, much better to know than not to. So that's how I got to writing about this subject.
And as you are writing, what's the intention of it? Is it to explore this period yourself, to reflect on it as a novelist in your characters, or is it to make the audience, make the readers reflect on this period of history that they might not have had an idea about?
Yeah, well, all of those things, of course. Writing or literature, or both writer and reader, is a complex encounter as well. We read out of thought primarily because we find pleasure in whatever form it is. We find pleasure in the processing, because the writing is well executive, because it intrigues us, it pleases us in some deep place, like listening to music, something like that. But it also tells us about things we don't know, almost always, even if it's about situations that we're very familiar with. When writing is interesting, is because it makes us see again what we think we know. But at times it also tells us something completely new to us. It brings us news, in other words. It tells us what we don't know. So all of those things, really, and if you're lucky, you get all of them in one novel.
This is a very simple question that I'd like you to try and go into detail on, which might be tough. But how much are you thinking about the very next word that you're writing? Does it have to almost earn its place? Is there a purpose for it there, or is it just let's get it out and then we'll try and fix things later? How fancy are you thinking, I guess, with your words?
I don't strain like that. That sounds like a straining business, making words struggle out. I quite enjoy writing. And I don't find it painful to write. I hear sometimes others saying what a struggle it was. The struggle is not really to get the words out. The struggle for me is to shape and to hear and keep listening until the balance is right. So getting the words out is, the words come, and then you look and you think, maybe not. Try again. And sometimes, like I said earlier, it's actually quite good to just say, I know that's not quite right, and leave it for now and move on, and then return at a later date, perhaps the next day, or even later, and find out what's wrong. Because sometimes you can hear what's wrong. I can, I think. So, but you can't always hear it immediately as you're thinking it through and putting it down. But when you go away and you come back and then read it, and I think, this something isn't right here, and what is this? But that too is a pleasure. It's a pleasure to knock it into shape, as it were. Well, it takes a long time to write. I have an idea of who these people are when I begin, but I don't really know them very well. And it's really only as I write that I think, would this person do this? Possibly. Or this person, no, maybe not. So in that way, I kind of build up this figure by as well putting the person, or the character rather, not the person, the figure, in contingent situations. Let's say, would this person do this? What kind of person is this? And so that's how I get to know them.
Now, you've been much celebrated for your writing on the experience of colonialism. How important is it to keep telling these stories and to explore them, as you said, and reflect on them through different entry points, I guess?
Well, I don't think I have any choice. I don't think writers really have sort of like a wide horizon or landscape or whatever. Most of the time, it seems to me, writers have particular concerns that they return to from different perspectives or different positions or whatever. Not because they say, this is my subject, always, but because you really don't have that much choice. These are the things that are snagging your mind. These are the things that keep coming back. And think, well, I didn't quite get that to that point, or that's something interesting you said about whatever it was. So it's not really a matter of saying colonialism or whatever, although I do talk about colonialism, but I also talk a great deal of other things that are to do with human relationships, that have to do with caring for others, that have to do with kindness, to do with affection, to do with family life, etc., like all of us do. The fact is that for many of us, for me certainly, the consequences of European colonialism on various parts of the world, certainly on my part of the world or on the African continent, the consequences of that are still profoundly with us. So it's not just a matter of writing about something that happened. It's writing about something that we are still engaged in, that is still seriously impinging on our national and social lives of people in various parts of the world.
Now, I'd like to talk to you about the Nobel Prize, just because I've never ever spoken to a Nobel Prize winner before.
No, right.
When were you made aware? Like, is it how does it, do you just find out when they announce it? Do you get like a little email beforehand?
No, you get a phone call beforehand, just beforehand. I got the phone call at 9 minutes to 12, and the announcement was made at 12 o'clock.
Were you aware that this was in the pipeline, or was this complete news to you that you had even been discussed for it?
I was completely unaware. In fact, when I got the phone call, I thought it was a prank.
That's amazing. And it does it come with a pressure now for you writing? Is it something, because it's such a prestigious award that's known the world over, and it kind of builds you up to such an extent, to a certain extent rather. How much pressure do you think that might bring to the way you tell stories in the future?
Well, I don't know yet, do I? Because most of the time now, I'm not doing it, writing at all. I'm talking to you. Truly, that's what's been happening since October, whatever. I'm just talking with people, which is fine. No, it's not a complaint. It's to say that that's the deal. We get this kind of honor and award and so on. you want to know, want to hear from you. And also there are all these new editions that are coming out. And so that means that, publishers want you to speak to journalists and to our readers and so on.
And lastly, is it a physical award? Did you get like a medal or something?
Yeah, you get a medal, you get a kind of a stroll thing, I don't know, a document anyway, which is quite grand looking. Then you get a check, and you get a lot of attention, and it makes you feel very happy because you've been recognized in this way, and you are now part of such a fantastic team of writers as well, preceded you, very full admire now, and people want to read your books. So, how much happier can it be as a writer?
Thank you to Abdulrazak Gurnah for coming on the show. His new book is Afterlives. You can grab a copy right now. In the meantime, I'd love to hear about the best book that you've read this year. Send it over to me, writersroutine@gmail.com, or you can use the contact page on our website, writersroutine.com, where you can see all the other books that have been recommended to us through 2023. You can also support the show and back us at patreon.com/writersroutine. And if you'd like to support the show and get some help with the plotting and the back end of your writing, all the planning, get to go.plotter.com/routine. And we will be back next week with Elsie North, who has got a new book out. It's called Ugly Truth. It combines her fascination of celebrity culture and her love of psychology in a brilliant thriller. It's called The Ugly Truth. We'll hear about it with Elsie North next week on Writer's Routine. I'll see you then.